party tonight! What? TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else!
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my circuit!
Everybody loves Hippo Toes.
Scary dog!
Jensen at Blurnsville.
Futurama!
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premier podcast, TV Party Tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, our favorite show is The Boys, Season 3, brought to you by the good people at Amazon Prime Video. And I'm sure other production companies, but it doesn't say it on the Season 3 Wikipedia page. Joining me tonight is my brother from another mother, my favorite concert-going partner. He raged against the machine with me, and we'll talk about that more tomorrow night on the Metal Hammer of Doom Extra. Ladies and gentlemen, Cleveland rocks in Ohio, and Cleveland, wait, take two. Cleveland rocks, and Jessie irons your socks.
Okay, yeah, there you go. That did not sound horrible at all.
No. We had a viewer and I lost him with that. Ladies and gentlemen, Jessie Starcher, how do you do, sir? Good old Dick
Hey,
Tittins.
Mark. No Dick Titton tonight. No. No. I'm just plain old Jessie there on the old moniker. So yeah, hey, good to be back here. Going to be talking some more boys. It's oh man, as if they couldn't top season 2. Let's talk season 3. It's going to be fun.
All right, and of course down there, it's the disembodied, yeah, baby. Speaking of dicks, is the disembodied voice of the voiceless, the Max Headroom of the Radulich Broadcasting Network, the great and powerful Oz, Robert Winfree. How do you do, sir?
You know, I've never actually seen Max Headroom. I'm aware of its existence, but I have no context for what it is other than, again, knowledge that it's out there somewhere.
It was big when I was growing up as a kid because I'm like 100.
Oh
so
man. Yeah, I got plenty of memories of old Max Headroom. Matter of fact, I tie Max Headroom with Baby Jessica. Yeah. Do you remember Baby Jessica, Mark? Winfree?
Vaguely, yeah.
I got to feel old this week because it occurred to me that my two youngest brothers are at least like 5 years removed from ever going to a restaurant and having the host or hostess ask them smoking or non-smoking.
Wow. Hear that, Mark? They get to go to restaurants. I never did such a thing.
Save it for tomorrow.
Yeah, save that.
But yeah,
tomorrow.
I took this animal out to a fancy barbecue restaurant, and Jesse's like, "What do you call these things?" It's a menu, Jesse. What?
You got a picture of me holding it up. I'm astonished. That's amazing.
What does this say? What this line that says tip or what? Oh, Jesse, Jesus Christ!
Oh. How come I got to sign 3 receipts? I don't understand what's going on here.
Jesse's like, where are we going for some fancy eatery? Wendy's? I'm like, oh boy.
Would have been on the menu. They just didn't have one down there in downtown Cleveland I could find. Baby Jessica fell in a well. Remember? She fell in a well. We had to rescue her. They did a whole TV series.
I remember.
Right. Yeah,
I do remember that.
I just want to make sure I'm not the only one here that feels old.
No, we
Go ahead.
got you there.
Well, you know, look, there was a I made a John Benet Ramsey reference not too long ago and was greeted with just resounding silence by everyone around me, at which point I was reminded once again.
Wow. Wow.
Who I spend most of my time with.
Time is unkind to us all. All right. Speaking of unkind time, season 3 of The Boys, it's a year after the end of season 2. They're working for I think it's the Bureau of Victorian
BSA,
Newman's Bureau
right?
of Superhero Affairs. Yeah, the Bureau of Superhero Affairs. To apprehend problematic superheroes and have been at peace with the Seven. However, the conflict is resumed once when Butcher begins to investigate the truth about the apparent death of Soulja Boy, one of Vaught's first American superheroes, with the hopes of killing Homelander for good. Meanwhile, Homelander's mental stability begins to deteriorate as Vought attempts to restrict his powers, while other Seven members such as Starlight and Queen Maeve assist the boys in their plots against him. So, we talked before the show about, whether or not I had much of an agenda or structure. And, with you guys, we're the three of us are really good at just kind of kicking the ball around and talking. We're known for the 3-hour podcast, us three wise men. So I wasn't tremendously worried about having talking points. I really only had one that
still shorter than it's still hang on, we're still shorter than the shortest thing Refn ever put out, for the record.
I wanted to talk about one thing before I kind of kick over to Robert, because he has like a list of things. But right off the bat, I needed to talk about the Herogasm episode. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is not because, despite the fact that I'm, a pervy old man and I have to talk about anything, sex related. Jessie, the Herogasm episode is they infiltrate an orgy of superheroes, or in superheroes having an orgy. And it ends in, Soulja Boy blowing everything up. And I didn't watch it when it aired. I binged the whole thing in preparation for this over the past week, preparation for this review. But I remember like, oh my God, the Herogasm episode. Oh my God, the Herogasm episode. And people were like, it's the naughtiest thing ever. This thing came close to an NC-17, or that episode was NC-17 and all this other stuff. What am I missing here? I've seen sex on television before. I've watched Game of Thrones. I've watched. Yeah. I didn't see anything.
That's mostly the viewer getting violated.
I've watched The Deuce. Okay, these are all things that happened on premium cable. I don't understand, and this is what I want you to point out to me, dear sweet Jessie. Why was everyone making such a big deal about the Herogasm episode? Like, what did I miss in that episode that people think is, oh my God, it's crazy. It's something I haven't seen on TV before. It was just people having sex until Soulja Boy blew him up.
Well, what I took it as, I thought there were like a lot of people anticipating the episode because from what I saw, there was a couple covers from a comic that was shared. So like this was going to be, they couldn't believe that they were going to put this on TV, which I agree with you. It wasn't as, there was certainly some over that. There was some sexual stuff going on.
The guy with the long penis and like opens the door. Hello, I get like that would be disturbing for people, but that was like the most disturbing thing I saw.
Right.
And to me, that wasn't even like that big a deal.
I mean, the only thing I could think of is because it was just like, hey, this is going to be the setting of the episode, and we're going to spend most of our time here, ladies and gentlemen. There are going to be plenty of people having sex all episode long. That's the only thing I can think of.
Without the context of knowing what Herogasm was like in the comic. Like I remember the little bit of the boys that I have read by Garth Ennis, there was definitely a scene or two of like young superheroes in training, like banging each other. And they made a point of saying it. They were like, this is what young superheroes do. They just bang all day long. Right. And so again, I get why they would want to put that in the show when it's such a fairly big part of the comic. But it was kind of like a fun setting, but I didn't think it was that big a deal. What do you think, Robert? What's your opinion of the Herogasm episode?
It definitely got overblown if you bought into the hype that kind of just started perpetuating itself. It's a fine episode. I mean, I was frankly more excited to get to watch, Butcher and Homelander trade hands than anything else going on in the background.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it looks like just real quick, and you can keep going there, Robert. But I pulled up the Herogasm issues, and it looks like those showed up in 2009. So yeah, this is an episode apparently that's been almost a little bit more than 10 years in the making. Everybody probably couldn't believe that this was actually going to happen. Oh my gosh,
oh my God, Herogasm! Finally, everything I've. The Phantom Menace, Herogasm, all the things I've ever wanted.
That's probably not an inaccurate comparison, all things considered.
Right. I think the other thing that you were mentioning, and I don't remember people reacting to it or anticipating it, but the fact that like the first episode begins with someone's like penis getting blown off because the Incredible Shrinking Man and on all of that.
The termite, their version of Ant-Man.
Right.
Oh, it's great. That is great. Yeah, that was to set the season tone. That right there set a tone. Like this guy, going in there, and then we say blow his penis off. It was a little bit worse than that. The guy got blown in half after the termite sneezed and immediately grew to normal size. So it was over the top. It was one of those ones where my jaw dropped and I looked over at my wife. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't, this is going to be another season that's just off the chain for the boys. I can't believe
your wife didn't immediately check out.
No, she's been on board for the boys for ever since
everyone's
first
frozen.
Season.
That's just great.
Everyone's frozen. I'm fine.
But what about my wife?
That was about.
I said I'm fine. Everybody's frozen. What are you talking about?
Okay, let's start again. Hey Jesse, what do you think of the
Mark
boys this
Radulich.
season? All right, so hey, it's the voice of the voiceless. All right, I think you started to before the whole podcast went to plaid. You started to talk about like it's a little worse than his penis getting blown up. He gets like blown in half. Go.
Right. Yeah, and Winfree said that he's surprised that my wife didn't check out, which she did not. She's been on board for the boys since season 1, and
there's no talking penises in it, so
Well, actually, right, right. She stuck through Pam and Tommy, but and that got a little bit more interesting.
Please, baby, don't go. It's just a talking penis.
Please get out. I've got to do this for the network. All right, she stuck around. But yeah. I mean, like I said, set the tone. It was over the top. It was gory. It was bloody, and it was hilarious at the same time. So what a way to start the season off. It was great.
Yeah, as far as like setting a tone, that's the other thing I just want to address real quick, and then I'll kick it over to you, Winfree, to get the rest of this discussion going. I'm out of talking points now. Is how
in 5 minutes.
When you think about like DC and Marvel, we've commented, especially Robert and I have commented about Marvel and like the sexless universe. It was a comment made about Star Wars, but it applied to Marvel too, where everyone's just a fussing and a fighting, but but there is no, other than the most romanticest of love ever between Peggy Carter and Steve Rogers, and the occasional like quippy love with Iron Man and what's her nuts, but
Pepper.
There's not a lot of like sex in the Marvel universe, and there's even less so in the dreary, depressive, fucking angry Zack Snyder DC universe. There's none of that.
In fairness to the Snyderverse, just very, very briefly. This is to the credit of the actors I'm going to cite more than the material they're given to work with. But I absolutely believe that Henry Cavill and Amy Adams as Superman and Lois, like I believe those two. Like
sure.
Those two I believe get it on. Like, but anyone else, no. Like it's very we mentioned this before. Like there's no, when I say erotic love, I don't mean in the salacious sense, but there's no Eros in the MCU.
Right.
And it's a real thing that's missing.
Yeah. And so if you were to think about like, well, what if half the people on the earth had superpowers? What would they do with it? They would absolutely use it to like bang harder.
Yeah.
they would absolutely be, pervy sex stuff going on. People would absolutely abuse their power and be terrible about it. So the fun thing about The Boys is it kind of looks at the superhero genre and says, yeah, but what if it was real life and there were no restrictions on what we could show you? And let's think about the worst psychological elements of the human condition, and then give it superpowers and see what it does.
It helps tremendously that because I believe both Mark, Garth Ennis, and who's the other guy that works on the comic? Was it Grant Morrison?
Goodness. I can't remember off the top of my head, but go ahead. Keep talking. I'll figure it out.
Okay. But, the two gentlemen who are primarily responsible for the comic, The Boys, have publicly said they hate superheroes.
And it shows.
Like they hate the way the mythology is told around them and whatnot. And I'm not here to weigh in on the merits of their position. I think there is value in Paragon stories. I think there is value in that kind of mythology storytelling. I think there is just as much value in quality, insightful deconstructionism.
Sure.
And that's what we get here. And so the point there is they come by it genuinely. Like, these are people who genuinely dislike an element of the medium or this element of storytelling. So when they sit down to critique it, it's coming from a place of, again, authenticity to the authors. And that carries a lot of weight. You know, it's not the same as when you get, and you get this all the time in Hollywood, you get someone who is hired, hey, write X. But I hate X, but write X. Fine, I'll write X because I have bills to pay and this is the world we live in. And what you get is something that then when everyone watches it, boy, this is a bad example of X. And the author's going, I hate X to begin with.
I didn't want to do this.
I don't want to write your stupid musical.
I didn't want to even do Batgirl the movie.
Oh boy.
We're not getting into that.
Garth Ennis, you're right there because I recognize obviously him being the creator.
I knew Ennis.
Darick Robertson is the other name that's tied to creating the boys.
I don't know why I thought Grant Morrison for some reason.
I didn't see his name pop up anywhere on the wiki. Okay, somebody else could let us know.
That's just me transposing names then, so no problem.
So I just want to just to conclude this point, I think what the boys does well is that thoughtful deconstructionism, but I think it's also an editorial on the human condition in the sense of we would do so much worse to each other if we had the ability.
Oh yeah.
And this is also a critique of modern media and media manipulation, that sort of thing. So
this season in particular does a really good job of exposing is the wrong word. We all know this is the truth, but re-examining sort of the utter ludicrousness that is the media machine in contemporary society.
Right.
I mean, you have Homelander in this do their in-world equivalent of Tucker Carlson is kind of what gets him out of his slump early on.
One of the things I noticed on TikTok and Twitter and some other places was this was clearly a progressive show. This is clearly, in many cases, an attack on modern conservatism, not conservative philosophy. I want to be specific about that. Modern political conservatism, the MAGA people, the Trump people, that sort of thing. This was obviously an almost an angry response to things like January 6th and the whole Trump thing. And I'm not here to discuss the merits of it in particular, but clearly these people working on this show used this show to go after that. And
never mind. Finish.
Well, hang on. The reason why I brought that up, and I want to hear what you have to say, but the reason why I brought that up was there was a lot of almost condescending reaction from progressives that conservative fans didn't know this was an attack on conservatives until just now, you dummies.
There was at least one viral tweet, the context of which was basically, boy, those dumbasses on the right, they celebrate stuff like The Punisher and The Boys and V for Vendetta and don't realize it's mocking them. At which point, you person on the internet has also completely lost the plot.
Yeah. So, and I don't have, even if it's something that I happen to believe, I don't care if there's a criticism of it. I will watch and judge the criticism accordingly, if it's done appropriately enough. But I did find that element of the show interesting, that it had this very distinct editorial point of view. And there were legitimately people that were like, my favorite thing, you've betrayed me. Did it? Or are you just dumb and didn't know what you were watching?
Okay, there are those idiots out there, and that's fine. What I appreciate about The Boys is that it certainly has an editorial point of view, it's also smart enough and incisive enough to not become almost, for a show that's essentially a parody in many respects, it does not become a self-parody. it does not paint the other side of the aisle as virtuous.
One of my favorite things in this episode is at the very end, the very, very end, you have a progressive screaming at Homelander, and Homelander just loses. They attack the kid at the end. Is what happens. They go after the kid.
Oh, man.
And Homelander.
Hang on. This is one of the things when I say the writing is very smart about this.
Mm-hmm.
That idiot who walks in, look, I'm not here to I can't solve the polarization problem in America.
Mm-hmm.
What I can say is that whatever your political bent, if you go to a rally of the opposite side wearing the wrong colors, if we can use that analogy, that's gonna go badly. So this idiot shows up in the yellow that is with the believed Starlight t-shirt.
Right.
That's one of the things they propose in this. That's one of the bits of sloganeering. And he chucks something at the little kid Ryan, who's just floated out of the sky. Homelander's come down and said, "Let me introduce you to my son."
Right.
And I want to talk about Ryan's arc in a minute or two, but he's introducing his son to the populace, like, "Hey, I've got a kid," and this idiot chucks something and it hits the kid in the head.
Right.
Now, if you were writing this dumber, what the guy throws hits Homelander, and Homelander just finally snaps.
Right.
And
right.
Homelander at that point, look, Homelander's a villain. Let me be very clear about this. But he's also a nuanced character in many respects. So the fact that he is reacting to his son being assaulted, never mind how ineffectual said assault is, and it is utterly ineffectual, but he's reacting to his son being attacked, not himself being attacked.
Right.
Right.
And yeah, he overreacts and he murders this guy, but it's just sort of endemic of the quality of writing that this could have been painted in a much different light, and the writers are smart enough to continue at least a degree of nuance.
Well, go ahead, hang on, Jesse, and I'm going to go right to you, but I wanted to say this, and Robert had to kind of go a windy route to get us to the exact same place I wanted to address. He lasers the guy in the face, kills him, just murders him in front of all these people. But because he's on the wrong side, they all cheered it. And is there not a finer point about where we are in political discourse?
Oh yeah.
I disagree with your point. Great. I hope you die. I hope your whole family. I mean, when did societal interaction and national conversation become a Reddit board?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because and I don't go on Reddit all that much. It's not really my scene, but my understanding of Reddit,
my side is you're not wrong.
my understanding of Reddit is essentially if you disagree with someone's position, they wish you and your whole family dead after being sexually assaulted. It's about everyone's kind of response to things. It's like, this didn't happen overnight, but that's where we
specifically.
Well, sure. If it's like paper, it's like paper mache and crocheting, I doubt that gets that, whatever. But all right, Jesse, go ahead.
No. Those people are the crazy ones.
They're
the
I was going to say, you haven't been on any of those boards lately, have you? Nah.
Discussions about which kind of stitching and which hook threads to use. That gets nasty in a hurry, man.
Yeah, I have death threads. I wanted to definitely support what Winfree was talking about with the writing there, because, if I'm out and about and somebody throws something at my kid, if I had laser beam eyes, I am going to probably react in said way. That's just probably a given.
Have you ever been in traffic and you got to get somewhere and it's not moving and people are making bad driving decisions and you just wish you had telekinesis and you're just like, woof. I can't tell you how many times I've thought I just want to change gravity and throw every car in the air.
I've wanted to flatten so many tires in my entire. It's so many.
Imagine for a day you had Homelander's powers. How many people you would kill?
Right, exactly. And he's not stable, but he does something that, number one, was an automatic defense for his kid.
Right.
But he also murdered a man in front of hundreds of people, which is, I think, is kind of like, I don't know if it's his nightmare or his dream. Obviously, what the reaction he was expecting, right, dude? Because the reaction he was expecting was like he was expecting, oh, now everybody sees me. They see me for what I am, which is his absolute worst fear. And then all of a sudden, because he wants to be accepted so bad, and then when everybody starts to realize, or when he starts to realize that everybody accepts him for what he just did, murdering somebody, I mean, you are frightened for whatever world that is that we're watching, because now you have a Homelander who is accepted as being a murderous psychopath.
Well, that's the thing, like both in character and in terms of editorializing, that tacit recognition that so long as at least half the world thinks you're right, you can get away with murder. Legitimately get away with murder.
Right.
And what does that say about us as a society?
Out of 12 half the time.
What does that say about us as a society where love your fellow man has turned into kill the guy with a different point of view than you? And that's what the show in many ways talks about, at least in reference to Homelander. But Robert, you had a litany of things you wanted to discuss, so I'm going to turn the leading of the discussion over to you.
Yeah, I had a few. Just sticking with Homelander for a second. Homelander is the best television villain of the last 8 years, give or take.
You compared him to Hannibal in the show Hannibal, didn't you?
Yeah. Yes, easily the best since then. This is a very well-written character, and it's incredibly well acted. We talked about season 2 of The Boys was basically the Homelander show. Season 3 doesn't lean on him quite that hard, but Antony Starr does such a remarkable job in this role. I mean, I don't think he's going to get the appropriate credit until after the show is done, because so much of what he does borders on elements of the role are not designed to appeal to what we've been trained to think of as good acting.
Right.
But it is a genuinely remarkable performance. So I absolutely needed to give him the credit once again that he has earned for that. He does a remarkable job. The scene where he talks to himself in the mirror, and you get the versions of him attacking each other, basically. Really, really well done. The fact that this character is grounded in reality for all of the super stuff. All of the issues that he has are human issues. His lack of parental love. What happened? I feel like he was that guy from the Simpsons bit where Dr. Marvin Monroe wanted money to make a box that would just periodically torture the small child within it. And then he would release it after 17 years and see how the kid responded to the person who had been torturing him. That's a bit of what his upbringing was. And anyone would have his problems. It's worse because of what he can do physically. So, he needs a lot of credit for that. And we get the nice little, it's not really a curveball. It's kind of predictable in some respects. But the bits where he and Soldier Boy interact after it's revealed that Soldier Boy is his father. I mean, as soon as you realize, the relationship there, Soldier Boy is going to hate that guy. Once you've spent any time with Soldier Boy, and God bless Jensen Ackles, he does not get enough screen time in this. But everything that character is, everything that Soldier Boy is as a character, he's going to hate Homelander because Homelander is everything that he views as pathetic and detestable.
Well, it's so funny because my wife and I recently had a conversation about toxic masculinity, and this isn't necessarily the time or the place to get that in depth with it, but we can touch on it just a bit because I think there's a nuanced discussion to be had over what is actual toxic masculinity, what's just masculinity that maybe people would prefer wasn't exhibited because it makes them uncomfortable, but there's legitimately nothing wrong with it. And then there's just good old-fashioned masculinity that doesn't really offend anybody. And I'm not really sure what goes into what column anymore, because I also think it's person dependent. I think if you're somebody who just naturally hates men, all male behavior is toxic. You have to have a broken back and a vagina as a man in order to not offend people. So what I love about him and what I love about sort of the inherent discussion in his character throughout this show is he has what I think most people would consider traditional toxic male qualities. But I think that there's a lot of men looking at him and going, finally, a character on TV that represents me. And like their wife looking at them like, yes, the worst parts of you, and them going, shut up and make me a sandwich. But I do like that there's this for such a progressive, liberal leaning show, there is a tacit recognition of, can we sit down and have a discussion over how we'd like men to act when we haven't really come to grips with that? It's something that over the course of the last year or so of podcasts between you guys and some others that I've had on here, we've really, in many different shows, talked about, but what is modern masculinity now? What is to be expected of us? What is it that women are looking for? What is best for society? What are some of the things that we need to retire about traditional masculinity that are in fact toxic and no good for anybody? And the fact that we can't even come to an agreement about it. And that is to me the magic. That is the magic to me of Soldier Boy's character.
Yeah.
Is that there's almost an inherent recognition in, some of this stuff is great, some of this stuff is bad, but I don't think anyone agrees on which is which.
Yeah, there's stuff with Soldier Boy that, he's very much a walking metaphor for PTSD.
That too.
Well, hang on. I bring this up because he deliberately and expressly refuses to acknowledge it.
It's common.
It is, but his entire power-up set is triggered by things that relate to his trauma, and then he explodes and destroys everything around him. He's
having a flashback, and he legitimately explodes.
Yes.
You talk about somebody like having a flashback to a trauma incident, and they become like violent and punch the wall.
Right.
His violent and punch the walls to like explode nuclearly.
This is taken to the nth level.
And burn out the compound V from any superhumans that happen to be in his vicinity.
But what a metaphor, though, right? What a metaphor for for angry men.
Not just angry and damaged men, but the way in which it is processed. Mm-hmm. Because when asked about it and when confronted with it,
I'm not shell shocked, which I thought was great.
Butcher says to him, you got PTSD, mate. And he goes, I don't have shell shock. I'm not a pussy.
Right. Oh my God. It was so
buddy.
That's such a great line. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. It is 2022. Mental health and mental health awareness and resources are everywhere. And we are trying terribly to have a conversation about it in this country as it relates to guns and so many other things. But it's so awkward, and it just trips and falls, and people don't quite know how to get their mind wrapped around it. And there's still, to this day, despite all of that, this idea that to acknowledge your mental illness is weakness. Mental illness is weakness. That is a core belief people have. Boys don't cry, and if I admit that I've got some shit wrong with me, I'm a pussy. And is that not a quality of toxic masculinity? Wouldn't we be all better if we acknowledged our mental health, and the need for help as a source of strength and not a source of weakness? And I guarantee you there's somebody listening to this podcast going, no, pussy. Shut up. I absolutely not. Could we not talk about our mental health problems?
I don't need help.
And go back to whiskey like normal men.
In that same vein, just to get away from, a fictionalized world and talk about the real world very briefly.
But why would we do that?
Hang on. A couple of weeks ago, there was a UFC event I was covering, and one of the guys that the UFC is pushing right now is a fellow by the name of Paddy Pimblett, and I find him to be insufferable. However, one of the things he made a point of doing in his post-fight interview was saying, my best friend killed himself 2 days ago. And men out there, if you feel like there's too much weight on your shoulders, for God's sake, talk to someone. I can't tell you how much I would rather have him crying on my shoulder than be going to his funeral.
It's good.
And again, I find this guy to be an insufferable wanker half the time, but he's dead on about this.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
And Soldier Boy talks to that. He talks to, as a character, he talks to a lot of things, but one of the things he speaks to, like you mentioned, this notion that it's not, the There's another scene that relates to this because Huey's arc for this season touches on this in some very, very similar ways.
Oh, very much.
Huey and
like not wanting to be saved by the girl every single time.
Right. He wants to save her.
Yeah.
But he wants to save her because it's not masculine to have girls do stuff for you, which is really funny because every girl I know wants to like help, wants to fix, wants to save. And if you're a man, and if you're any kind of a man's man, and I'm going to put that in quotes, you don't want no girl saving you. I'll fix this my fucking self. I'll walk alone. That's what all the songs are about. I am a rock. I am an island. Go ahead.
In the case of Huey, there's another layer to it, I think, that needs to be addressed. He doesn't. I don't think he objects to being saved in the traditional sense. He feels utterly helpless to there is a masculine urge to protect.
I think the saving emasculates him is what he's getting at.
I think partially, but again, if he was just being saved all the time, I think it might annoy him, but I think he could deal with it. It's the fact that his girlfriend, the woman he loves, is in perpetual danger from a man that he knows is the most vicious, unstable, murderous psychopath on God's green earth.
Yeah, he has no chance of saving her from Homelander.
And he can't. He is utterly helpless, and I think it more so than I'm a man, therefore I must do X. I don't think that's his problem so much as why can't I do any? He is helpless, and that helplessness in the face of an urge to protect. That again, that's a very masculine urge.
I was gonna say, can we not address the fact that I think a man's worst fear is to feel helpless? We are trained from birth to be doers. Men take action. Men do. Men provide. And when you are cut off at the wrists, your hands are gone, and you can't do, what kind of a man then are you? I believe is the question we would ask ourselves.
And it's that's a very real question that needs to be asked. And Huey struggles to find the worth that he should find in his partner.
Mm-hmm.
And look, that's a real struggle people have. In his case, it's manifested more, and I'm taking this drug that will kill me to gain temporary teleportation powers where I show up everywhere naked.
But does that not speak to the man's struggle of, I'm so afraid of being emasculated that I'll kill myself to prove how much of a man I am? Go ahead, Jesse, speak on it. I know you do.
Well, I was just going to say that, this feeds. Imagine if you were given a drug and it's like, hey, the thing is that a lot of society is leaned on pharmaceuticals in some form or another in order to get shit done. And a guy has done plenty. A man has done plenty of that. Cocaine's a hell of a drug. It's going to get you out there. You're going to be able to put on that show that you need in order to make that money. Or you're able to go to work the next day and you're outperformed.
What was that? Wasn't it John Belushi's who said, I need X amount of cocaine to be John Belushi.
Just be that person. Right.
Look at Robin Williams. Robin Williams did a metric ton of cocaine and out came some classic comedy because of it.
Right. And
Chevy Chase stopped being funny when he got sober.
So these, again, Mark, you're talking the truth there. That does speak to, it's one of those elements in this show. There's so many elements that this show touches on: commercialism, the state of masculinity, just that's what makes this show that interesting and great of a watch. It's entertaining, plus you get all this stuff that's going on in the background.
It is the mark of a truly well-written show that you can talk about. We're almost 40 minutes into this, and minus my discussion of dicks blowing up, and a little bit of our introduction, we've spent the better part of a half an hour talking about current kitchen table subjects that this show addresses, while also giving you a goofy superhero show that's wildly entertaining.
Right.
Let me tell you the conclusion the show draws very briefly and what it says about. And to everyone out there, I'm going to give you an invective after this, so stick with me.
You're not without my consent. You won't.
You don't even know what that means.
I signed the papers before this podcast.
You can invective me all night long.
We
currently Googling invective. I'll be back.
You Google your invective on this show, we're gonna get demonetized.
Dude, we're talking the boys. This had no chance of being monetized.
Oh.
There's a bit near the end when Huey is talking with Starlight and they're just driving.
Mm-hmm.
And he recalls, and this is set up earlier in the season. I think it's actually a different episode. It's either the beginning of this one or in the previous one. And he just talks about something his father did for him. And he's like,
Pizza rolls.
Been thinking about pizza rolls. Because that's what his father was like. When his mother left, his father was going through the worst time of his life. But he was still there for his son. And even if all he could do was make pizza rolls to make sure the kid didn't go hungry that evening. And Huey, who's been searching for some kind of, external strength, I want to be the equal of my superpowered partner. I need to be able to protect her. All of these things. And his epiphany about what it means to be strong is genuinely touching. And so to everyone out there, if your father or husband is if you don't have to deal with late bills, if you get fed on a regular basis, take a minute and thank whoever's responsible for that. I'm assuming the father in this case, as I'm for the sake of the discussion here, but whoever that happens to be in your life, take a moment and thank them for what they do, because they give a little bit of their soul for that paycheck every week. And it is nourishing to have that acknowledged.
Can I just real quick? I don't know why I feel the need to kind of tell this anecdote, but you said something and it triggered it, and I'm just gonna throw it out there. Been thinking a lot about some people that I know, and I've been thinking about work, and yeah, we all work, men and women work. I acknowledge that, but relating back to masculinity and what is defined by a man, what defines a man, and I was thinking about how there are people that I know that struggle to just get up and get to work, and they find reasons to not go to work, and their family suffers because of it. If for no other reason, sometimes you just got to get up and go to work to give everybody else in your house a fucking breather from you. Who hasn't heard that one? Like, please, for the love of God, go to work. Go to work. I'll miss you if you leave. Come back in 8 hours. I will miss you. Get the fuck out of my house. But some of us struggle with that. The daunting task of working a job that does not fulfill you, but it puts food on your table and the lights on and a roof over your head, and so you do it because that's what men do. And I've been struggling. I got up every single day and went to work when I was sick. Like, I get it. I own that, but I recognize that not everybody does. And not everybody knows that not everyone would even know that is what defines a man. That no matter how hurt, no matter how sick, no matter how depressed, no matter how hard life is, no matter how far uphill it is, no matter how many feet of snow you have to walk through to get there, get up and go. You're a man. Get up and go to work. Provide for your family. Take care of what needs to be taken care of, because no one else is going to do it. And in the absence of men, women do that. I want to make sure I acknowledge this, that not every man is even a good enough man to stand by his family. They're off in the wind somewhere.
Right.
And so women have to do that. They have to do those things. They have to be the ones that no matter how hard life is, they got to get up and go to work and do all those things. And I'm sad and disappointed, I guess, to know that I know people who are struggling with this, and I just want to shake them and go, it doesn't matter what you think or how you feel or what's going on with you. Get the fuck up anyway and go to work, because that's what men do. And if you're a man, you'll do the things you need to do to take care of your family and shut the fuck up about it. Off my soapbox now. But that's what the boys brought. But that's having this discussion about the boys. That it just brings that out of me, and I needed to take a minute and to say it out loud. So,
sure. No, that's very true. And again, so Hugh finding the inspiration for what true strength is in the form of what his father did. And finally realizing that there's a lot of people, and this includes me, in some respects. I don't think we fully, as a kid, you don't usually appreciate what your father is doing most of the time.
I don't think you notice.
Yeah, like you
your
don't.
kids are so self-centered. You know, you have no clue.
They really
like
are.
you just know, like your parents are mean. They won't give you all the candy to eat for dinner.
By the time you get to be like, again, 20s or so, like that's when you start to realize, everything that was going on as you get a bit of hindsight and a bit more experience in the world. And Huey just having that realization about his father that, he's not, because Huey's dad is not like some paragon of anything, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's not a bad guy.
That whole scene, that whole discussion is about how the loss of their mom affected him, and in not having the emotional maturity to handle it in any kind of real way, but knowing that it doesn't really matter how well or how good or how badly you're handling the loss of your spouses. You still have a job to do, and that job is to take care of your child and keep the house going.
And the fact that he did do that successfully, and Huey having that moment of realization, and credit to the actor for portraying that very, very well. That's a weird bit of emotion to portray effectively, and I think he absolutely hit it out of the park. In addition to being dunked on with more blood and guts and gore than even poor Bruce Campbell on the set of Ash vs. the Evil Dead.
Yeah, Jack Quaid, by the way, is the actor's name, and I actually think it's so easy to portray Huey as sort of a milksop. But I think the writing in The Boys, what they do very well is that he's not the most masculine of men, but his arc is always perseverance,
right?
Despite an endless barrage of things that will kill him or at the very least make him uncomfortable, all of that, he perseveres through it, and that's why we like Huey so much. But also because deep down inside of that character, as portrayed by Jack Quaid, is somebody who is made of sterner stuff. It just takes some to get it out of him, which I like. I like the fact that that's how he's portrayed.
There's another kind of sub theme that runs throughout this particular season very, very strongly, and that is the damage. I'm going to phrase this the worst way I possibly can.
Oh, perfect.
The damage parents do to their children.
Oh boy.
And you see this in a lot of different places in a lot of different ways. And we mentioned Huey and his father, and that's more in the background to Huey's kind of search for, what does it mean to be strong in this world?
Mm-hmm.
And I that's more his arc. But if you look at Butcher, I think is kind of the one who's front and center in this discussion in a lot of respects.
Oh yeah.
Because he is a little bit of a father figure to Ryan at the beginning of the season, and then partway through it, he knows that he knows what he's about to do is going to get ugly and bloody and brutal, and I think he suspects when he starts taking the temporary compound V that this might be a one-way trip. It's confirmed later. But so he doesn't want this small innocent child to follow in his footsteps. Because while he tries to be, something of a good role model for this kid, he is very aware of how much of a screw up he is. Like Butcher knows himself very, very well. And he doesn't want this kid to follow that path. Unfortunately, Ryan then winds up he is very hurt by this because Butcher being Butcher acts badly to try and get to his end goal. Yeah, Ryan. Right. This pushes Ryan towards his father, and we talked about this at length in season 2. Homelander, for as screwed up as he is and as terrible as this is going to turn out, was making a genuine good faith effort to be a father figure to his son, screwing it up left, right, and center. But he doesn't want his desire to be around his child is not the traditional narcissistic. You reflect well on me, ergo I want you to be around. It's much more genuine than that. It's him trying to find something he's never had. And again, screwing it up royally. But it's genuine. And that counts for a lot when it comes to to the nuance of the character. So what happens with Ryan, we don't know yet. That could go very, very badly. You see it with Victoria and her injecting her daughter with compound V because she believes that, if you're not super, you're not anything, is kind of the tacit worldview of her character. So,
but it's a very real world view of, it's like You know, if you don't play football, you're not a boy. If you don't do this, you're not a girl. Like very clearly defined gender types, gender roles. And if you fall outside of those things, your parents, in a loving attempt to correct your terrible choices because they want you to be normal and successful, will do untold amount of damage. I say that, but the pendulum also swings to the other direction where it's just like, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and it's like, no. I don't want to offend everyone that listens to this, so I'm just going to say there are certain things that I'm hearing about now with students and certain identities that they are taking on.
You are not a dog. You do not get to eat out of a dog bowl when you go to school.
It's one of them.
What?
That's a thing.
Okay.
Teachers are being instructed about this, and it pisses a lot of people, myself included, right the hell off.
Yeah, in a overcorrection to try to help, you know, children as they sort out different hats to wear and personality types and whatnot. There's a lot of, I'll just go and say it. I wasn't going to, but I'll say it now. There's a lot of like, well, there's a lot of kids like gravitating towards any version of the LGBTQI type. Whether they are or they aren't is sort of immaterial. Everyone's just like, it's now cool to be any one of those things, and so everyone's transgendered. Everyone's gay. Everyone's bi. Everyone's this. Everyone's that. And then there's the school that's like, yes, you are. You're every one of those things twice. Because to not
Common
fall,
Core.
We are not allowed to take a position on this. We are here to reaffirm.
Right. And so if you want to, so as a boy, you want to show up to school in a dress because today you decided that you were transgender. It's like, that's right. And you are. And it's like, gosh, there's a in between. Like, we don't have to go all the way to kill all the fags, all the way to everyone's transgendered. There's a place in the middle. I swear.
Every kid. Hang on. Every kid becomes that kid from that kid from the one segment during Big Adam Sandler's Big Daddy, where he lets the kid do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
I swear to God, folks, there's more numbers out there than just 1 in 10. There's 5s, there's 6s. Like, there's stuff in the middle. Why? Why do we have to have only 1s and 10s in this world?
It is tough as a parent to, you know, figure out where to draw the line. I'm pretty laid back dude. So, you know, you talk to my 17-year-old daughter and she'll tell you that it's very rare that I'm getting involved in saying anything in regards to, okay, this is how you're going to live your life.
Right.
I will tell you though, she is 17 and things are starting to, let's just say things are starting to come up at the dinner table that we are like, okay, well, let's think about the decision you're about to make and how that impacts things that are happening in your life right now.
Consequential thinking is real.
Yeah.
It's something to be considered.
Right.
You know, no one's
I'm not
saying
anything's wrong. I'm just saying, hey, let's talk about it and let's have a discourse.
Taking away your right to be transgendered, if that's who you really are, and that is, you know, what makes you happy in life. I'm just saying, every decision, every action gets a reaction. You know, but anyway, Jessie,
you make a choice. You choose the consequences. Those two things are linked.
Yes,
immutably. So.
Jessie, you know, I've let Robert sort of lead the lion's share of the discussion here. We've all been interacting, but I didn't want to utterly dismiss anything you wanted to bring to the table. So please put your measly morsels of conversational. Please put your bean on the table so we may carve it up.
With the season, we've been talking about the heavy hitters here. You know, Homelander. We've talked about Huey. We've talked about Butcher. We've also got our love story between Frenchie and Kimiko. You know, there's some great moments throughout this. I'm trying to think of like some of the good ones that happened for each character. I don't want to waste time bringing every single one of them up, but I remember
Kimiko's penchant for hallucinating musical numbers.
Oh, that was fantastic. Yeah, it was great. She goes off singing and she's having a great time. And you're like, wait a second, is this actually happening? Of course not.
Inherent in Kimiko's story is this idea of, you know, she finds her powers to be a curse until she gets her ass kicked and suddenly she wants them again.
Right.
And I just find that that's a very human thing, you know, to where it's like, I don't want this thing until you don't have it anymore, and suddenly you want it back. No matter, and you're just it's almost to the point where you're like blind or you're forgetting how much damage it caused in the first place. But there's a great. I just finished watching season 1 of The Wire, which we're going to talk about in I think a week or two, and Kima talks to McNulty about, as a female cop, you know, they're not getting out of their squad car because they can't take an ass kicking. And she was like, after you've had one or two, they're not so bad, you know. But
amazingly, you can get used to.
Yeah, but to the point of like Kimiko, it's like, I don't want to live like a feral animal. I don't want to have these powers. I don't want to be a murderer. Oh, I got my ass kicked. Give me all the Homelander powers back. You know, such as people's fear about that sort of thing.
Very briefly to Kimiko, like in a series, in a season, not just the whole series, but in a season where a man whose superpower is an extendable, prehensile, controllable penis, a guy gets exploded from the inside out, Ant-Man going through the urethra instead of the anus.
So bad.
A guy is cut in half by Butcher trying to control his heat vision. Victoria explodes some poor guy a piece at a time because she can't see his head. Kimiko gets kill of the season for beating a bunch of gangsters to death with dildos.
Yes. Yes, she does. Man,
listen,
she messed them up.
If you've never been beat with a dildo, man, those things are. Look, if you've ever been hit with a dildo, those things are fucking hard, man. Just saying, like they can do some damage.
I'm not going to inquire any further about that one. That sounds great, Mark.
What? Have you not handled a Jessie Starcher?
Have I not get? Oh, well, I was going to ask you about getting hit with one, but then I was like, no,
I'm just saying, have you not handled in all of your years of fondling junk, and all of your years of fondling people's junk?
I've fondled some junk.
You've never fondled a hard dildo? You don't know how thick and hard these things are and how much damage they can do as a blunt weapon.
I've
seen pictures.
They look pretty tough.
You don't
they
know
look
what
like
you're
they
talking
could take
about.
a beating.
They give a beating is what they do.
Winfree, save me. What was the actual relative topic that you wanted to bring up?
Well, first of all, look, if you're a fan of horror and action movies, you keep a tally in your head of the most inventive kills, and Kimiko doing so with marital aids, like that's suddenly at the top. Took a long time for something to supplant Clive Owen killing a man with a carrot.
Marital aid, that's awfully judgy. Like single women don't use dildos. What's wrong with you?
I'm running. Look, I gave the crude answer. I figured I'd go with the euphemistic one for the second time around. What do you want me to do?
Show me the numbers.
Robert Winfree, straight from the 50s with his TV dinner.
Yes, use the euphemism to beat them to death. That'll do it.
Hey, what about Black Noir? Tell me about Black Noir and his.
God, he broke my heart. I'm not kidding. Look, I am not the saddest person in the world. I'm not the most depressed person in the world. None of that. And I've got a good support system around me. So with what I'm about to say, please don't freak out. I'm not confessing to suicidal ideation or anything.
Not on my show, you're not.
But
I'll have to talk about an infection. Next thing you know, go ahead.
Invective.
Invective. Oh, my bad.
You uncultured swine.
Those are two very different things. That's the only reason.
Isn't one weather related or something? I don't know. I'm gonna have to look that up. I'm googling invection right now. But
hey, baby, you want to follow my invection?
Look, go on with your. Please I'll continue. Get to this. Was really serious for a second.
I have a bit about the deep. Just give it a minute or two, okay?
Okay, great.
Okay. But was talking about Black Noir, his whole backstory is so damn tragic, and some of it's comedic. Like his bit about, Soldier Boy, you kept me from becoming Eddie Murphy. I could have done the role in Beverly Hills Cop or whatever it was.
Oh, yes.
And no, you couldn't. I know the actor in question. No, you couldn't. But the response that when he is trying to process Soldier Boy coming back, and I actually do want to compare and contrast Homelander and Soldier Boy in a couple of different ways in a minute, so remind me to come back to that. But when he's trying to process this and he cuts the tracker out of his own body, and I need some time. And he goes back to his imaginary friends. As a guy who has been very profoundly lonely at times in his life, just him trying to process that with things that brought him joy as a child, especially when you realize how damaged he is. And I don't just mean, I don't mean damaged in the same way that the other superheroes are damaged. I mean, this guy got his head split open more than once. Like there's serious cognitive issues with this gentleman. And just knowing that this is how he's trying to process and trying to understand what he needs to do, it legitimately broke my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Especially how that particular sad story ends.
Oh, yeah.
When there's this weird bit with Homelander actually right before he kills him, and it's shockingly touching. Like, I never quite understood Noir and Homelander, like I mean, not that there's any kind of physical connection, but as an entity. Like, how's the relationship between these two characters, and why does it work this way? They never made a lot of sense to me until right near the end of Noir's life, when Homelander's looking at him and says, you know, everybody looks at you and they don't get you. I do. I'm the only one who knows when you're happy and when you're sad. I know what you're feeling, and partially because I can just x-ray through your mask. I can see your face. I literally, and you never take the damn thing off. I'm the only one in your entire life, and this is not his words anymore, but this is what he's saying. I'm the only one in your entire life who knows you, who understands you on an emotional level. And one bit of dialogue, and suddenly everything about those two snaps into place, and then he donuts him. For somewhat understandable reasons in a lot of respects, but it was just so sad. Like, we didn't get a lot of Black Noir here, but what we did just it absolutely kicked me in the soul. It really hit a few of my buttons.
All right, so Homelander and Soldier Boy.
Couple of things about them. One, again, talking briefly about the damage that parents do to their children. Soldier Boy had everything Homelander wanted, and look at it, and he still turned out like a piece of when Soldier Boy talks about his background with Butcher, just very briefly, like, no, came up on the mean streets of Philly. I know the cover story. No, my dad owned like 4 steel mills in Pittsburgh. Or whatever city it was. It's Philly or Pittsburgh, forgive me, one of the major ones in Pennsylvania. Like, no, I was rich. My dad owned a bunch of steel mills. We were very well off. But nothing I ever did was good enough for my dad. And
as somebody who has often disappointed his father, I know, a shocker. That was a real resonant thing to me about how I don't know how much I can speak for all children, but I know for most kids I knew, wanting your parents to be proud of you, especially if you're a boy, wanting your parents to be proud of you is a very real feeling. And when you can't do it, when the goalposts are constantly moving, when you can never get that approval, it's soul crushing. And so when he talks about like wanting approval from his father and never being able to get it, and how much that affected him, I was like, yep, I hear you. I hear you. You are heard.
The killer line there is, after he's become a superhero, and he's fought in the war and he's won, and he's come home and he's this big, and he's been in movies, and he's fought the war and all of this stuff. And his dad's response to that is, well, a real man would have needed to cheat. Right. Because you took a chemical to turn into this.
You're never good enough. Nothing you do is right.
Yeah. And he's still carrying around so much of that to the point where he passes it down. Again, he and Homelander don't interact all that much, but when he tells Homelander, you're just like me, a fucking disappointment. Like, even though Homelander's a disappointment in an entirely different way.
But I wonder how much of that is also your ability to lash out and beat up the weaker amongst you. When you've been beaten on and you can't strike back at your abuser, you often turn to the people weaker than you are and beat on them, and it just kind of rolls downhill.
It rolls downhill, yeah.
Yeah.
But the compare and contrast that, look, to Antony Starr's credit, again, his acting in that moment, like he's wanted a father and a family his whole life, and his dad shows up and like, no, you're just like me, and I really wish you didn't exist. Like that's soul crushing in so many ways. There's a similar line after they oust Giancarlo Esposito from his position as the head of Vought. And if I have a wish for season 4, I want Giancarlo Esposito back, and I want him and Butcher to have to team up because I love the way those two had brief interactions in season 2. I want more of that, please.
But he has to be carrying the Darksaber.
Stop that. But when after he's been ousted, when he gets his final, when he and Homelander talk for the last time, and the gloves are off as far as Esposito's concerned, like, why would I give you respect? It would just fall into that black bottomless hole of insecurities you call a soul. And Homelander kind of shrugs that one off, but when at the end he says, you're not a man, you're not a superhero, you're not aspirational, you're just bad product, and walks off. Like Antony Starr, to his eternal credit, again, he acts that facially so well.
Oh yeah, yeah, he does.
But the difference, this was when they introduced Soldier Boy. I was curious how they were going to differentiate him from Homelander, not just in powers and whatnot, but more in because they're both monsters. But you can't have the same monster, right? Like King Kong is a different monster than Godzilla, deliberately so. So everyone treats Homelander is a child with a shotgun. If you need this is how they treat him. He's an emotionally damaged child who throws a tantrum, and when he does, bad things happen. And I was curious, what's Soldier Boy going to be? Because he can't be that, right? Like you can't do that again.
Right.
Took me a minute. About the third time we see Soldier Boy, it was actually, I think, the Herogasm episode that made this very, very clear for me. Soldier Boy is not a rampaging toddler. Soldier Boy is the abusive dad. The way people react to him is how people react to an abusive parent. Like, and there's a very big difference in how you treat those two things. Like, you don't treat Homelander the same way you can't. Homelander, you can't condescend's the wrong word, but you can kind of condescend to him. You can placate him in ways that, if you try with an adult, backfire in the worst ways possible. And so I just wanted to give the writing another bit of credit there. Those are two very, very different monsters, and they are played very, very differently in how they interact with the world. So kudos. Okay, the last thing I think I wanted to bring up here, because the Deep is back.
Oh, the Deep and Timothy. Poor Timothy. All he wanted to do was be friends.
I've got to tell you something about that scene. I don't know why. I haven't figured this out yet. That's the most disturbing scene in this entire, all three scenes.
What, the Deep getting blown by a squid?
No.
No, when Homelander makes him eat the octopus.
Yeah.
Oh, I was getting Old Boy vibes.
I mean, you've seen, I've seen Old Boy. I watched that actor eat a live octopus because that's what actually happened in the scene. So, this actor chowing down on a very clearly CGI'd octopus, but something about the totality of that sequence and Homelander and the way he's menacing that and everyone else's reaction to it, that genuinely unsettled me.
Yeah, it was sad.
That was a
really
genuinely unsettling scene.
I think what makes it is him acknowledging that the thing is crying out for help. Right, so, imagine you were eating a baby.
Yeah, I know, and you've named it and everything.
Right.
You know its name, and it's
right.
And the baby can talk.
Like, here's baby Colton. He's 3 months old. Well, eat him, Jesse, or I'm gonna fucking shoot you in the head.
I mean, that is horrible.
Yeah.
That is more disturbing than a bunch of horror movie scenes I've seen. Like, that's genuinely unsettling material that goes on in that particular scene.
Think about, just the natural course of eating animal meat. It's dead already. You have a nice piece of veal. You're not acknowledging it's a it was once a baby animal.
I mean, I'm weird.
Wouldn't
eat it raw, but yes, this was a living thing.
Leave your fetishes off my show, sir. So.
Oh, yeah, that's rich coming from you.
It's my show. But I just think about if you were just eating a chicken, an innocuous chicken. Who doesn't eat chicken? Chicken's everywhere. Chicken nuggets, right? Rotisserie chickens everywhere. But imagine you're eating the chicken
life and that factory farm chicken had, but only to wind up on your table.
And it's talking to you as you're eating it, going, no! How could you do it? Could you continue to? Robert could, but the rest of us humans,
I don't know. This is one of those. This is genuinely one of those moments where, if you have to eat that thing, or this, and the deep nose Homelander is when he says, "I will kill you."
Right.
It's not idle.
Right.
I will die badly if I don't do this. I don't know what I would.
There has to be some degree of cognitive dissonance in order to eat animal meat. Or you can't do it.
There's absolutely
unless you're utterly heartless about the whole thing. But if you're eating a hamburger, you have to disconnect the fact that this was once a cow.
Right.
But imagine it was mooing at you and crying as you're biting into it. Could you do it then? Most people probably not.
Depends on where we're getting the burger from. I'm not putting myself through that for McDonald's, but you get a nice burger. Yeah.
Let's not be judgy about the cows.
Fast food, no regret.
Let's not be judgy about the cows that produce the meat that goes to the McDonald's. They're not, it's not like the cows are just please. I don't want to go to McDonald's. I don't want to be Cisco meat.
It's cute that you assume McDonald's hamburgers are made from cows.
Oh my God.
Think smaller.
Enjoy your rat burger, asshole.
Point Mel made.
No. There's the line from The Simpsons when when Krusty has the rib witch, right? Mm-hmm. Well, we had a magical summer together, but the animal we used to make the rib witch is gone extinct. You killed all the cows. You're way off. Think smaller. More legs.
Oh my God. Anyway. My point is, what makes that so horrifying is the idea that you are eating a sentient creature, that those levels of disconnect are now gone.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, this was a creature that means something to him. He had a personal, sexual, emotional relationship.
No. Hang on, no. He only had female octopi that were doing that to him, but he knew Timothy.
Remember where he wanted to do the three-way?
Yes, he brings out the
and
that poor woman who escaped a cult to try and monetize this superhero finally has this is a bridge too far. I put up with everything. I will not.
Can we acknowledge because the Radulich and Broadcasting Network very man forward, but can we acknowledge the woman in that scene, just how put upon women tend to be, and they put up with a lot, and it's just it has to be that level. Look, you can't ask me to sleep with an octopus. I do so much for you. That's a bridge too far, and hang on. That is the most realistic thing in this show. That a woman would be "You've asked me to do a lot, but I'm not fucking the octopus." That is an actual thing I can hear being said.
I have no sympathy for that character because it's made abundantly clear what a gold-digging, manipulative woman she is.
Oh yeah.
Because all she does is try to push get forward. You got to be more assertive. You got to be front and center. You've got to eat Timothy to keep Homelander happy and to keep us here and in a lot of money. And he says, okay, but I'm sexually attracted to marine life. So can we involve the octopus?
So bad.
It's so great that scene can be read two ways. One is the very put upon woman. The other is the man. I do. You drive my career. You push me to do all these things. I ask for one little thing. I just want the octopus to be present, and you vamoose and write a tell-all and go on all the talk shows and drag my name through the mud and just F me.
Yeah.
I don't think a truer relationship among men and women is portrayed than that one.
Probably not.
You've asked me for so much, and I've given so much. This feels like overkill. And the guy going, "You never do enough for me. It's never going to be enough. There's always more." The fuck? How men and women get together at all on this planet without arranged marriages is beyond me.
Biology is powerful.
Indeed.
Okay. I think the last thing I want to touch on very briefly, and
my friends, any one of my friends that hears this podcast, would be like, "Gosh, like the things he says about people." Is he talking about me?
I think the last thing I have that I wanted to touch on very briefly, I mentioned that this show is smart enough and incisive enough to point every bit of its satirical criticism at both sides of the theoretical aisle. To the extent that you believe there's only one aisle and two parties, yay for the false dichotomy of American politics. The two-party fallacy. It screwed us all. The satire of having these superheroes and other celebrities sing Imagine.
Oh.
But that was a direct attack on like Patton Oswalt and what's
I know
and all that.
And
when they did it from their mansions while the rest of us were locked in a fucking closet afraid to go outside because the unnamed origin of unknown virus was going to get us.
I laughed so hard at that. Like that's some of the again, like to all the people who go, this is only a send-up of contemporary American conservatism. You are missing half the show.
Yeah, for sure.
Because the fact that this thing also...
Well, hang on. Before you go any further with that.
Okay.
Even other progressives were making fun of that. Like that.
Yeah.
The level of like cognitive dissonance that got those celebrities to do that and thought it was going to be like comforting for anyone. Like even other progressives was like, you fucking asshole. So
yeah,
I'm not giving this. Like, if you want to point to something else and be like, see, it makes fun of progressives too. That's fine. You can't use that as an example. Everyone thought that was asinine. Everyone.
Again, like I only bring that up because this show gets a lot of traction as being a common this season in particular, and for good reason, mind you. Like as being very critical of the media machine, which. It takes a more anti-conservative bent because they're kind of likening Homelander to Trump in a lot of respects. Sure. And again, that's fair grounds for criticism. And I'm not,
Trump would have absolutely lasered the press. They were like, all right, explain to me what your thing on explain to me the thing on the wall again. Zoop.
Oh yeah.
Again, 1,000,000%. So this is not me saying that none of what they're saying is not fair game, but in a season that is especially a bit heavy on criticizing one side of the spectrum, it is important to point out that the other side is far from exempt from this. Look, the party that's being manipulated here, believe it or not, like the political party being manipulated is the Democrats. Bobby Singer is the Democratic nominee for president, and he's going to get dead real fast so that Victoria can be president.
Right.
Like that. Right. That's where that's going.
Wow.
And he's being manipulated by the big business that is Vought. Like there's no. They could have easily. I've said this before about the writing. They could have easily made this a X side is wrong and stupid. Y side is brilliant and virtuous. Huzzah!
Right.
And they don't. But because that's really kind of the arc that we get with A-Train this season, for as short as it is, and it's some of the funniest stuff you'll ever see. I want to change my costume to reflect my roots, and everyone mocks him for this. Like, buddy, we know where you're from. We know where you're like. You don't have roots in Africa, but he wants to monetize it and express it and explore it.
Oh yeah. And
I want to tell the people I'm down for the cause, and his brother reads him the riot act, and thank God for it.
Right,
we also get, hang on, the last thing about A-Train, because this was the weird thing, but we get a very human moment between A-Train and Huey. This is after A-Train's brother has been crippled by their police analog superhero. I think it was Blue Hawk or whatever.
Blue Hawk. Yep.
So, the boys is not subtle. But he says, Huey gets a bit pissed at him, and he said, you never even apologized for murdering my fiance. And A-Train actually apologizes. And it's a weird little moment when he says, I'm sorry. Because he's still pissed, and he still doesn't want to, and he tells him, I now know more of your pain. I had to watch someone I care about destroyed in front of me. And I'm still a jackass, I'm still a douchebag, but for whatever it's worth, I am sorry. And
Huey was ready to go too. Huey was ready. I
He
mean,
really
I think
was.
Huey was looking for a fight, and he was really taken by surprise the fact that he apologized. That was one of my notes here. Was like for A-Train, there's two moments. There's that, and then when he gets Blue Hawk by the ankle and drags his ass down the road. That was the other one that
the fact that he gets his heart at the end was just.
Oh, I know. What irony. Oh, it's horrible.
Reminded me of Oz, where the one Nazi character ends up getting like a black guy's
Ghetto gums.
And then right, and then he gets kicked out of the Nazis because he's not pure anymore, and so he has to rip his gums out. Oz, everybody. Hey, Jesse, go ahead and read the rest of your notes.
Oh, that's it. That's it. You guys covered every character that I wanted to talk about. So every aspect that I wanted to jump into, we did a great job.
All right, well then, Jesse, sum up the.
Okay, hang on. No, I have to get a negative out of. Hang on, let me get my negative out of the way.
Oh, okay. You know what? You're right. You don't get enough opportunities on the Radulich Broadcasting Network to criticize things. Please take this opportunity.
I have been almost universally positive here. So
right, this has been a glowing review by Winfree. I want to hear what this.
Yeah, there are people watching this podcast going, "Well, now I've seen everything." Yeah.
I don't need YouTube anymore.
People just stripping naked and walking into the woods to live deliberately. Winfree was positive on something. We're done here.
I really don't. I have not been the biggest fan of what they've done with Maeve. I thought she was okay in season 1. By the time we get to 2, and they say some interesting things with her character. You know, hey, you're a lesbian, so you got to be with this girl. No, I'm bi, but we've marketed you as a lesbian, and you're in a relationship with a woman, so guess what? You get a bit of that. Season 3 with her, like, her happy ending feels utterly unearned.
She doesn't do a whole lot this season other than jump and what? She gets into the fight.
She gets our only for a show about superheroes, she gets maybe the only genuinely heroic moment that we've seen on screen.
Right.
When she tackles Soldier Boy out of a window as he's blowing up.
Mm-hmm.
But she's just the fact that she gets basically everything she wanted. Her powers are gone. Everyone thinks she's dead. She gets to live in anonymity. She gets to be with the person she wants to be with. That just felt really unearned. It felt in a show that is like almost offensively authentic.
When
like,
you say unearned, do you mean like they didn't give her enough to get to that end point, or you don't feel like the character was good enough to have earned a happy ending? Like, I'm confused why you say that.
Both.
See, I don't agree with that at all. Maybe not giving her enough. I mean, it's an ensemble cast. Some people are going to get short shrift, and I don't care that. It's for me. You want to write her off the show, and you gave her a happy ending to do so. So what? But your other thing is she's not a good person and doesn't deserve to be cheered at the end and have a happy ending. I'm like, she was one of the people who early on, I mean, she comes to Starlight when Starlight's sexually harassed. She's the one standing in many ways in Homelander's way. She's there when, with the plane and everything and the video. I mean, she's consistently being threaded in as somebody who is good at heart. She has an arc in terms of redemption after being sort of the character who has lost her way. She doesn't get a lot of screen time because we're spending so much time with Huey, Butcher, and Homelander that nobody else gets a lot of screen time. But I don't think she's a bad person by the end of this. I think she's somebody who absolutely does earn that happy ending, Robert.
You're welcome to have had a different experience with the film this than I did, but her opposition to Homelander is not because Homelander's a bad person, it's because he's a threat to her.
I don't agree with that, but I don't want to argue for the next 40 minutes.
Okay. Look, I'm not saying I do not give her credit for motivation in that particular case. Like, she's afraid of Homelander, rightfully so. But if he were ambivalent to her, I don't think she would care. That's my read on her character.
I feel like she was redeemed through Starlight, and after seeing The Way, knew that someone as powerful as Homelander, as damaged as he is, was no good for anybody. And I think that has less to do with his personal relationship to her than her seeing the forest for the trees and knowing he had to go. But I don't know. I feel like you and I could be arguing about this for the next 40 minutes on another podcast. We would. Go ahead, Jesse. Settle up between us.
I was just going to say, I was going to jump in here and say, I see exactly where Winfree's coming from.
All right. Good night, everybody.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. I see that she has to live in fear for the rest of her life. She has no powers. And so it's not like she completely got off scot-free in this case. I feel like she has something to be scared of. So it's not, I don't see her sipping, Mai Tais on a beach. Although that's probably going to happen with her character. But regardless, I think she's probably scared that Homelander's going to find out that she's alive and go kill her. And he easily can now. So that's where I see, like, okay, yeah, what Winfree's saying is right, but there's also this worry that she is going to have perpetually for the rest of her life.
Yeah, and that's fair. They might play it differently come season 4. So I think to close, then, my question would be for everyone. We're getting season 4. We all know we're getting season 4. What do you want out of season 4? Like, the way things are set up, what do you want out of it? What do you think might happen? Like,
I cannot do another season of Butcher trying to kill Homelander. I just can't. Like, 3 seasons of this now. This is all we're gonna do. Like,
hang on. To your point, I think whatever happens between those two characters in season 4 has to be final one way or the other.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't know where you go after you've resurrected the Winter Soldier in order to kill Superman. What next? What's the next big weapon you're gonna find to take him down? Are we gonna Superman 2 this? Are we gonna trap him in a machine that reverses his powers? Like what is the next thing that they're gonna do? And to that point, like, how many more times are we gonna do this? It's getting to the point, and I kind of got this way at the end of season 3, where if this is all Butcher's gonna become a real boring character real fast. They need to move these people on and evolve them just a touch to keep this going, because the show can't survive on shock value alone. You can't do too many more Herogasms. We have to move this along. And at this point, it was 3 times they've now gone after Homelander, and 3 times they failed. And we're at a point now where they've not only failed, but they've now given him exactly what he wants. This has to come to an end. Homelander or Butcher can't make it out of season 4 alive.
I've heard the theory that season 4 should, somewhere in its run, actually pull the trigger and depower Homelander.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be interesting. That would make things interesting. I mean, I agree with you, Mark. Going back to this well over and over and over is going to get. It is kind of old. Like, what are we going to do next season to try and make things different? The only thing I could see is, like, what's bigger than Homelander? And it's Vought, in my opinion. So
I think maybe what if, see, I don't know how the comic goes. The comic went on for something like 80 issues or something like that.
Right, man.
No
I wish
idea.
I could say too. It went on for a while.
I'm curious, I think this episode, this season
we are very divorced from what took place, like wildly different from the source material at this point.
Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. This whole series has been about the dangers of powered people, and both sides sort of.
There's that great line from Giancarlo Esposito's character in the beginning when he's like, "Our mistake wasn't making superpowered people. Our mistake was making them heroes. We tried to make them aspirational." And really, that was the flaw in the logic here. Shouldn't have done that. Should not have done that.
Well, I think there has to be
PR camp.
There's this tacit recognition that powered people are chaotic and a danger to civilization. I mean, and just think about that in terms of real life, because I think The Boys does a really good job of that. That's what we started with this whole conversation with. So we're sort of rounding back. if you think about think about this in terms of the availability of automatic weapons. Okay. I'm not weighing in. These are things that happened. If you give any random set of people, 100 people, an automatic weapon, a few of them are going to misuse them to damage a lot of people, right? So think about that with superheroes. Let's give a random assortment of people all kinds of powers. A few of them are going to hurt a lot of people to where one might be led to believe that maybe nobody should have these anymore. Psst, that's the gun violence debate or gun control debate. So I think that is something that has to be dealt with in season 4, especially now that like Starlight, the 7 is utterly broken up. Starlight has left the 7 and has become one of the boys. I think there needs to be sort of an internal debate amongst the boys about is it that all superheroes need to go, all guns need to be banned, or just some, or is it just or should we focus on who should get the guns and who shouldn't get the guns? That is a very real debate that we're having now, and I think that should be the spine of what holds up season 4. Jesse, what do you think?
They could easily go there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I just see them going after something bigger than Homelander. I could see them, trying to. We've got the whole. What was her name again? Claudia Doumit. Claudia Victoria. Thank you. I was going to say she portrays her. We've got that getting ready to happen. So. Obviously, are we going to have a bigger threat to worry about there? She could pop heads. So I don't know. I don't want to see them go back to the same well, but the conflict has to end at some point. So we've got to get there. We just got to get there. That's the only thing I could say.
All right.
So hear me out. Season 4, aliens.
I love it.
That it would actually be funny if like your mid-season finale is they do depower all the superheroes or kill all the superheroes. There's none left, and then aliens attack.
Then Kang and Kodos come down.
Yeah, exactly. Don't blame me. I voted for Kodos. Jesse, give me the final word on the boys. Let's get out of here.
Season 3. I had a lot of fun. It was fantastic in my opinion. A lot of issues that we talked about on here tonight, and we didn't get to talk about all of them either. We talked about the big ones, but there's a lot of other stuff that's happening in this series. So
this is the anti-Halo.
Yeah, I listened to that review, and then I woke up and listened to the rest of it. But yeah, this is a lot of fun. I would tell anybody who just enjoys an adult superhero TV show, this is where you need to go. And make sure if you got kids, be ready with that remote. Trust me, I was. Herogasm.
This is not Superman.
No, but yeah, had a fun time.
All right, folks, this is one of the very last TV shows that we're going to be doing. We've got a few more on the schedule throughout the rest of the year, not counting the David Simon stuff. That's a whole other deal. But we've got hang on. Jesse, what did you do?
I didn't do anything.
Okay, so we've got Upload Season 2 that I promised Alexis that we would do. We've got Strange New World, which I promised David. The Orville, which I didn't have to promise Jesse. I just want to talk about it with Buddy because it's the best show ever. Only Murders in the Building Season 2. The Lord of the Rings show, which I promised Andrew Graham and Ronnie Adams. The Crown, which I will continue to do until that's over. I will make an exception for that show. And then that's kind of it, other than all the David Simon stuff. So we are counting down the end of television reviews for the most part here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network as I cut back to only 2 days a week.
I imagine again, for everyone out there who might be panicking about that announcement, look, these are going to continue to pop up sporadically.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime the bug bites any of us, and any of the shows, caveat, not any of the shows. Some of the shows that we have talked about in the past that are still ongoing, we will, of course, talk about future seasons, assuming that all parties are still interested, but this is going to be much more infrequent.
Yeah. I'm no longer compelled to cover every single Marvel show that comes down the pike, which is why we're not covering She-Hulk.
Sure, that's why.
I jumped out of the plane right in time. But tomorrow, we had a whole lot of canned shows over the past week and a half. I was in Cleveland with Jesse, seeing Rage Against the Machine, among other things. So we've got up the Highlander Long Road to Ruin, the Harry Potter Long Road to Ruins, all 4 episodes of that. Robert and I reviewed Pan, and then with Prey coming out this Friday, we re-released our On Trial for Predators and our Long Road to Ruin for Predators 1 and 2, which I forgot this, but apparently we also covered Predators at the time as well. So it's 2 different takes on Predators. Yesterday we came back live. We reviewed DC League of Super Pets. Even when Robert and Alexis and I openly acknowledge there's nothing to talk about, we still go over an hour. We are some talking motherfuckers.
It's funny. I wanted to hop in there and see how long that podcast lasted because I caught the very beginning. I'm like, they're not going to make it past 45 minutes. No, you guys must have
hour and 20.
Well,
we have to stop and delay every 5 minutes every time Alexis has to interrupt Robert. So with something utterly off topic. Speaking of utterly off topic, Jesus Christ, we're done, Jesse. Lordy, Masterpiece from the Moon.
No,
we're reviewing it tomorrow. We're reviewing it tomorrow.
I'm gonna call them and tell them put out an 8th album.
I hate you. No more Lordy.
They'll do it.
No, I know
they'll do it too.
So we're reviewing Lordy, Masterpiece from the Moon, and then that's it for this week. We've got some re-airs coming up, and then next week our live shows. We got Jesse and Alexis actually reviewed the next set of episodes from Hell of a Boss. That'll air on the 9th. In the evening, myself and Robert and I will be reviewing Bullet Train. And then on Thursday, after I get done with the Mad Hatter's Gin and Tea Party, Jesse, I'm taking my wife to the Mad Hatter's Gin and Tea Party. What do you think about that?
That sounds saucy.
It's going to be. It'll be the second time I've done it, as a matter of fact, because I went to my friend's birthday, and that's what she did for it. My wife was like, "Are you going without me?" She's like, "Yeah, you weren't invited." She's like, I'm never gonna live down the time that I'd pull that on you. And I'm like, nope, never. So instead, I just have to take her separately. So that's what I'll be doing Thursday. But as soon as I get done with the gin and tea party, my drunken ass will come right on this podcast, and Jesse, Robert, and I will review Soulfly Totem. What do you think about that, Jesse?
Oh yeah, man, I'm excited. He shared I think a video today, and so yeah, it's gonna be fun.
All right, so that's what I'm doing, Jesse. I hear you review comics and paint houses.
I do paint houses. Okay. There's a reference, but I don't know what it is.
To the Irishman.
Gotcha. So I don't recall that being on my resume.
What, assassin?
Yeah, it's not on there.
If it was, you wouldn't talk about it publicly, dumbass.
True. Thanks, Mark. You outed me. Yeah. Hey, listen. Source Material Comics podcast feed. You can find it right here on the W2M network. I do talk about comics, and just today, as a matter of fact, Source Material released its 317th episode, and that is a 25-minute extravaganza of me explaining to you The Adventures of Bayou Billy #1 from Archie Comics. That's right. The 1980s swamp stomping NES game got its own comic, and well,
remember that game.
At the very least, you could tune in and fast forward to the end and listen to me do a dramatic reading of the video game exit scene, or the what do they call that? An outro. As Billy confesses his love to Annabelle. Oh, I even changed the octave when I was doing the editing there on the old Audacity.
Did you like kiss your hand in order to like make kissy sounds?
Oh, Billy.
Oh.
So anyway. Yeah,
Messy.
She had the vapors, Mark Radulich. But yes, that landed today. So you can check that out. The Adventures of Bayou Billy #1. And next week on the Unspoken Issues podcast, you can hear myself, Evan Bevins, and Chris Armstrong talking about the first meeting of Sleepwalker and Darkhawk. 3-part series called Portals of Power. Portals of Power. That's right. You could check that out. That should be airing on the 10th. And that's all. I mean, I guess I'll go ahead and throw a quick plug out to Kapow. We just finished up, in the fourth episode should be airing, of our role-playing game, experience with Kids on Bikes, where I play. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It's a good system. That's a fun system.
It is. I was a 13-year-old, very gassy 13-year-old, by the way. Yeah. And we went around this fictional town called Marietta, Ohio. It was pretty crazy. But anyway, yeah, check that out. That's it. That's all I have to plug.
All right, Robert Winfree, tell about all the violent sports you watch and how it affects you mentally.
Not much, actually. I was plenty disturbed before I started watching. I cover professional wrestling a few nights a week. AEW's Dark Elevation on Monday, MLW when they release stuff on Thursday, and WWE SmackDown on Friday. All of that is in the wrestling zone of 411mania.com. I also cover mixed martial arts for 411mania.com, specifically the UFC. So if you want my full recap and thoughts on UFC 277, or that's from last Saturday, or I will be covering this Saturday, UFC, forget the numbering. I want to say it's on ESPN 40, but don't hold me to that. Whatever their event is this Saturday, I will be covering that. It's headlined by Jamal Hill and Thiago Santos, so light heavyweights. Feel that enthusiasm. I also, if you want other thoughts from me on the world of mixed martial arts, I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast every Sunday evening. That is your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. So tune in for that wherever you're listening to podcasts. If you punch that in, 411 Ground and Pound, you should be able to find me out there. Give it a listen if you are so inclined. I always appreciate all the support that you're able to give me. Thank you very, very much, as usual. We will also be next week or the week after re-airing some stuff from Everyone Loves a Bad Guy that's now up and ready to go, so be on the lookout for that. Mark and I talk about why the Hulk is the worst, then Robert Cooper and I talk about why the Hulk's Rogues Gallery is the worst. Both of those may be exaggerated by me for comedic effect, but those will be up again in a couple of weeks, just in time for She-Hulk, which no one will watch.
Perfect. All right, but hey, at least it's not HBO Max. All right, folks. Poor HBO Max, killed in its crib.
Yeah.
All right, and eaten
Sad.
while it screams.
That's the deep eating HBO Max.
That's right. All right, folks. Well,
You can hear the wire praying.
I'll just go back on regular HBO. It'll be fine. All right, folks. Thanks for joining us here on TV Party Tonight in our review of The Boys Season 3 for my very best friends, my brothers from other mothers, Robert Winfree and Jessie Starcher. I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and for real this time. No, not for play. Behave.